Welcome to the school board meeting. 7 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. And first on our agenda is, actually second on our agenda is public comments. And Laura, do we have anyone signed up?
Yes, Arnold Bailey.
Good evening. Alan Bailey from Troy. Madam Chairperson, when is the deliberative session?
The deliberative session is
February 3rd.
February 3rd.
Yeah.
Saturday, February 3rd?
Yes.
And I assume that's at 10 a.m. in this building in the auditorium.
We generally do it in the auditorium. Occasionally, we've done it in the gymnasium. I don't think the specific location has been set yet, but let's assume the
We
auditorium.
walk in the front door, we'll find it.
Yeah.
Okay. When is the deadline for submitting a petition warrant article for consideration at the deliberative session?
That would be Tuesday the 19th.
Second Tuesday, January.
Second Tuesday in January?
January.
And where and to whom should I submit a petition warrant article?
You have to obtain your signatures, and you would,
Can't hear you, Lisa.
after you obtain your signatures, you'll submit that to the clerk. Am I right about that?
I heard half of that, I'm sorry.
The clerk of the district, so.
Clerk of the district?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's my intention to submit a petition warrant article asking the voters to change the funding formula from the current formula of 75-25 to 0-100. That is 0 based on average daily membership and 100% based on the equalized valuation of property in each of the 6 towns in the district. Years ago, when we became a school district, we agreed to be treated as the equivalent of a municipality. And within any municipality, we don't tax people at different rates based on the number of children in their family. I believe that the fairest way to do this, and I know this is going to upset some people, but I think more people will be pleased with this than will be displeased. The fairest way to do this is to take the equalized property valuation from each of the 6 towns, add it together, divide that into the cost of operating the school district for the year, and come up with a single mill rate, which would be used to determine the school tax for each of the 6 towns in the district. I'm convinced that is the fairest way to do this. 1 district, 1 mill rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura, do we have anyone else signed up?
No.
Okay. We do have our student representative report listed under public comment tonight.
So first off, Justin and I had a letter that we wrote on the 13th of November to the school board of the SAU district. It reads, "We are writing this letter to request that we may leave after we presented our student representative report. Although we've only served on it for several months, we both agree that we do not feel comfortable staying for the entire duration of the meeting. We have seen several disputes turned into full-fledged altercations, and although we appreciate the passion that each of you have, we do not think it is necessary to have the amount of hostility that we have seen presented with that passion. When asked to serve on the school board as representatives, we were eager to, because we love the district as much as all of you. We appreciate the time that all of you have taken to make better the district. We understand that disputes may arise, as is common with any committee or board. We think a lot more would be accomplished if all of you collaborated as opposed to arguing with one another. We think this board has a lot to offer, and we are asking that of each of you to contribute and discuss your ideas civilly with each other. Please know that this letter is not meant to be a voice of criticism, but rather combined voices of a group of students who want the board to represent our district in the best way they can. Many, if not all of you, have various assets that you can contribute to a positive and creative environment. Each of you are elected because we, the various different towns that fall under the SAU district, believe that you have the desire to make the district the best it can be. That is what unites all of you, your desire to educate students and unite the town through it. We cannot speak on behalf of the taxpayers, but we can speak on the behalf of students when we say that each of you can make a difference in our lives. Let that power remind you why it is so important that each of you can set aside differences and make a positive impact. Let us work together, not against each other. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Justin Venus and Tally Messenger. And with that, I turn it over to Mr. Justin Venus. And I hate to do this, but I do have to go back to our rehearsal.
Thank you for taking time out of your rehearsal, and thank you for the wise words.
So, not a whole lot to report, just two basic things that are upcoming this week. The first would be there's a pep rally taking place this week. It'll be held on Friday. Preparations have already been made, so that's exciting. And the other thing that's really important is the Christmas show, the holiday show. That'll be on the 8th and 9th, 8 o'clock, or on the 8th, there's a show at night, and then there's a matinee on Saturday morning and one more show Saturday night. So plan to go. Hopefully all of you will go as well. And that's all I have to report this week.
Thank you for your report, Justin.
Thank you.
And please relate to Tally that we will keep the student representative report early in the meeting, right around public comments. And if you'd like and you feel more comfortable now, you can be excused.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to matters that require board action, we'll be looking at SB 193. And Lisa has given to us a draft that she's written, and I'll let you take over and speak to that.
Sure. So the legislative sessions are underway, and SB 193 is a holdover actually from last year. And this is one of the bills that last year I testified up in Concord on a couple of different times. And so it has, at this point, the House Education Committee narrowly moved this Senate bill to the full House for consideration with some minor changes, but it doesn't change the overall scope of the bill and what it stands for. And so what I included in your packet was, I'm calling it a position paper on SB 193. And what I would like to ask the board is to consider endorsing the position that I've articulated in this document with a formal vote, so that when I go to speak in Concord, as I've been encouraged and supported by you to do so, I can share that I'm sharing this position paper both for myself as a resident and taxpayer of New Hampshire, but also the collective voice of the Monadnock Regional School Board. I think that the folks in Concord have seen a lot of superintendents attending and speaking. They see a lot of our representatives from the NHSAA and the NHSBA, the School Boards Association, and the leaders of those groups are asking us as superintendents to try to come up with some creative ways to engage our elected representatives on our boards. And I know that going to Concord can be difficult, but this can be a very powerful way to convey that this is a much bigger concern than just those that are going to speak. So with that,
Okay, thank you,
Pass that
Lisa.
along.
So I think it would be appropriate at this time if we did have a motion to endorse this paper as the official position of the Monadnock Regional School Board. So I see that from Bob. A second from Phyllis. We can have discussion on this. First, has everyone had an opportunity to read this position? Has anyone by chance heard Lisa give her testimony verbally? I have the testimony that Lisa gave to the Senate Education Committee last year. If anyone's interested, I can send that out as an attachment to an email.
wait a minute, you have the video?
Is it a video? I think.
audio?
No, it's audio.
Okay.
It's audio. Okay, yeah, it's audio. Does anyone have any questions about this? No? All right, well then I'll take a motion. All approve, or I'm sorry, all in favor of this?
Aye.
Opposed? And is there anyone who'd like to abstain?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. I appreciate the support.
Next matter on the agenda is public information sessions regarding the apportionment formula. And the primary thing we need to accomplish this evening is to ensure that everyone has received and read the information that was provided by our attorneys. And with that, we were to decide at this meeting whether it's appropriate for the board to sponsor public information sessions and to provide the information or gather information on behalf of the public, any information that's requested at those public information sessions. Would anyone like to make a motion on this? So hearing nothing, it's my interpretation that the board does not want to sponsor public information sessions on the matter. Am I reading that correctly?
I think you got it.
Okay. So we'll move on. We won't see this matter appear on the agenda going forward. It needs to be understood that if we are not providing the information to the public, they'll do their own information gathering, and the petitioned warrant articles will come in whatever order they are petitioned by the public. And when we look at the warrant, we'll have to decide at deliberative session how they'll be handled at that time. Okay? Board chair report. I just want to share that I understand the sentiment of the student representatives who spoke with us this evening. That was disappointing news that we received. And in light of that, I just want to remind the board that we are very visible to the entire district, the students included. And it's so very important that we act as examples to them in our behavior. The whole dude be nice concept carries over to us too. We can't be bullies to each other. We can't be rude to each other. We need to be professional, and we need to understand that everyone comes from a different perspective. And I'm hopeful that in time we will be able to get student representatives back in here, and we'll be able to have them feel comfortable at our meetings. I'd like to move on to the superintendent's report.
Coming around is the updated fundraising calendar, just for your information. And there was a request, and I know there was an article or two in the newspaper regarding SAU 29 investigating potentially starting school later, and kind of what the impact would be for us and students that attend CCC. And that, and actually, Jeremy, if I can put you on the spot a little bit, because you have been, you've attended at least one of those meetings with Keene and Fall Mountain to have this conversation. If you could sort of share, what that conversation has been and what some of those impacts that are being, that would happen if this were to happen.
Yep. So they're really early in their planning, and I don't know if I'm close enough. Am I? You guys hear me? Okay. They're really early in their planning stages. This was brought to one of the boards to look at from a community organization, and they started batting it around. They were talking about the research that's out there, and they've also made contact with Brattleboro and some other schools that have done it. They held a community forum this week, I think, or last Wednesday, I think, to talk about it and just kind of get some feedback. And there's going to be a follow-up meeting on that forum. There's really not a lot of details yet. They invited us to sit at the table to hear what's going on, and they've been very welcoming to us. But we don't have a lot of input at this point because, until they go forward with it. But they would look at studying it this year and then transitioning next year and then being fully transitioned the year after. Some of the impacts that we brought up to start thinking about would be CCC and then busing, of course, because we share busing company and we're not sure what the impact would be on us yet.
All right. Lisa, did you have, sorry, Neil?
Don't we start putting our plan together for the school year in January on what our schedule is going to be? And I understand from the write-up in that paper, they're not even going to present it to the school board 29 until March.
Yeah.
What happens if they do it in March and we're still on the old schedule? Are they going to bring CCC along with it or not?
So at the meeting that I was at, they did not have any intentions, the way I understood it, and I can't speak for them specifically, but the way I understood it at the meeting, they were not looking to have that schedule go into place for the 18-19 school year. It'd be the 19-20 school year. So they're still a year and a half out, is the way I understand it.
That was my understanding as well.
Do we have any other questions for Jeremy? Rob?
Not to open a Pandora's box, but do we have, from our administration standpoint, is there any desire to study this on our behalf?
I think so, and I think, we wanted to wait a little bit and see what the direction of SAU 29 was before we started going down that road. One of the other things that SAU 29 is also looking at is transitioning to an hours calendar, similar to ours as well. So, there's a little bit of back and forth with that. I know that Fall Mountain did a survey, I believe, of parents and students. Am I right, Jeremy? And just to kind of get a sense of what people thought, not about just the general concept. And the general concept was really well received, but that was very clearly just kind of a temperature test of the concept. Yeah, it makes sense, it's a good idea, but that's without really taking a hard look at what all of those other unintended consequences would be. What happens to, your athletic schedules, for example, particularly when you're districts that are pretty outlying already, and you already have significant travel time. What does that do to, when students will be traveling at night to come back? What does it do to your elementary schools and elementary start times? And as Jeremy mentioned, busing, because we share a bus company with SAU 29, but also you have buses that do one run, then they go back and make the other run. And so how can, there's a lot of moving parts there. So a lot of, as Jeremy said, there's just in the beginning stages of discussing all of those moving parts, but certainly because we have CCC and because we send students there, we would need to be a part of that. If they do decide to move more firmly in that direction, then that's something we're going to have to consider doing as well, and following a similar process. But we're just not at that stage at this point, I don't think, to start that conversation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Nick?
And just to be clear, when you talk about following suit, it would be following suit and adjusting schedules for the CCC students here, not our entire district, correct?
Either or both, depending on, again, if this does move forward, and there have been other districts in the state that have moved this way in the last few years, I think it would be a good idea at that point to take a look, do a self-study, and decide if that is, just having a later start time is something that would be good for the kids in our district. I can't make that decision, at this point without having that information in place. But I just don't think right now is the time to start that discussion. I think we have a little bit of time before we need to decide if we want to do a full-fledged study.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Was there anything else, Lisa?
That's all. We will have need for non-public tonight under C.
Okay. And do we
And
have
then
anyone?
also A we have as well.
Are you covering the business administrator's report?
Yep, I have, the only thing was just an update on, with the bus company, finalizing the contract with First Student. I believe back in June, the board did ratify or accept the bid proposal for the routes, with the exception of the special education routes. And so in the process now of just fine-tuning the wording of the contract, but hopefully that'll be signed before Christmas. But they're providing services already, and so it's a matter of just ratifying what's already happening. But that's it.
Great. Thank you. And do we know who's going to give us the extracurricular report this evening? Scott, thank you.
Hi. I lost the rock, paper, scissors as well.
Okay, all right.
So extracurricular met tonight, and actually, Laura, do you have the motion sheet that we took tonight? Just because I didn't write it down.
Yes.
If you could read it, please.
Yep. Going forward to recognize all state students through going forward to recognize all state students, first team, second team, honorable mention, through banners and individual banners.
That's the motion from the committee.
Okay, can you,
Second.
thank you, Phyllis. Can you elaborate on what that means?
Yeah, so the question presented to the committee was, what's the right way to reward or recognize students who achieve all-state band? And in that discussion, we walked through the fact that there are students who achieve all-state status in actually two different bands possibly, concert and jazz, but also in a variety of sports. So they might join the all-state baseball team or the all-state football team. And although the board has a tradition of awarding teams that achieve a championship status, we don't have a precedent that we know of for individual contributors who are given the opportunity to participate in an all-state group like this, whether it's arts, not just music, it could be art itself, it could be any of the sports. So the discussion went towards not just presenting the student with something to take home or an article of clothing to wear, but similar to the banners that you've seen in the gymnasium in the past, to create a banner program that would allow us to recognize all individual contributors, regardless of whether it's sports or arts, and to have that as a memoriam of sorts. And that we would refresh this each year. We could bring it out to homecoming parades, and then we would still ideally present the student with something along the lines of a miniature banner or certificate. This creates a way that we can really create that recognition and have it be lasting, and not just a one-time gift to the student.
Do you have a vision for where the banners would be kept?
Discussed that logistics need to be worked out by administration, but that the gymnasium and possibly something out in the main foyer or maybe that entryway into the auditorium, so that one school, one team approach of arts and sports being presented in both places would ring true.
Any other questions? No? So all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Sounds like the motion passes. So you guys get started on that, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, we will.
Oh, did this go around already?
Policy committee?
Yep, so policy committee met, and we are presenting 3 policies to you for first read tonight, which is to say that you can take them home and read them. And we will answer questions as needed at our next full board meeting. But to recap them briefly, the first policy is ILDA. This is an update to support some recent legislation that was passed and signed by the governor. There's a lot of redlining on this, but the heart of it is that any non-academic survey that the school district would present to a student must first be, we must first gather consent from the parent in a proactive manner. It's not an opt-out, it's an opt-in. So each family would need to opt in before a survey could be presented. So that's bringing our policy up to speed with state law. The second policy, JLCC, is an update to how the school nurses respond to things like conjunctivitis or pediculosis, which is head lice. We'll let you read that and we can discuss at the next meeting if you have questions. And the third policy proposed is ECAD, around district playgrounds. We do not have a policy on file for this topic. So this is about playground safety, annual inspections, making sure that any teachers or paras, any adults working in the facilities is required to, step through safety inspection or step through the local safety book for that particular building, that those things happen on a recurring basis. Felt it's important to get this established so that we have a foundation to work from regarding all manner of insurance discussions, any kind of playground safety.
Thank you, Scott. And that brings us to other, and we had a request for a review of the professional services that are contracted by the district. I know this work hasn't been completed, but we wanted to honor the request to keep it on the agenda. And Lisa, can you give us an update on where we stand or what our approach will be to gathering that information?
I think I still need clarification on what it is we're being asked to review. if this was discussed at the last board meeting, I apologize because I wasn't there. So I need a little more guidance about what kind of outcome or what kind of product.
So, yeah, it came from me. Madam Chair, can I speak?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Essentially, I had I think it's just my understanding of the professional services that we contract, i.e. attorneys, auditors,
Engineers.
engineer, all of those outside professional contracts, how are those handled? Are they on a continual basis? Are they reviewed? If so, whose responsibility is it to review them, to renew them, to look to someone else? It's just kind of a wide open, empty loop.
Okay.
You know what I mean? A not connected loop. And I'm sure there's more than what I've just listed.
Yep.
And I don't want to get, just the ones that we've encountered really have been the ones that have stuck on my mind, that I'd just like more clarification and some discussion on, is it, for example, our, not to pick on our attorneys, but are we under a retainer with the attorneys for 3 years, 5 years? Affinity, is there a contract? I'm not, I'd like some clarification.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I apologize for texting. This reminded me that Brian Bohannon wanted to participate by phone in this meeting, and we do need to take a short recess, I think, and get him on the phone.
Okay.
All right. So we'll give it about 3 minutes, if that's all right. All right, we're coming back from our recess. We weren't able to get Brian on the phone. We have a little bit of a technical difficulty, but we may bring him in for non-public. Thanks for your patience with us in attempting that. We're moving on to continued discussion of the Troy Emerson reconfiguration. And as we left our last meeting, I had several items that we had said that we wanted to accomplish before we can start to move forward on this initiative. And the first of them was being certain that we have all of the building assessments and the inventory of our physical plant completed before we do anything. Can I get a status update on where we stand with that?
I haven't received, feedback. I haven't received final or draft reports for the ones that were still outstanding. I know I did receive a draft of Gilsum.
Yeah, we haven't gotten Fitzwilliam yet.
Yep, and I haven't seen a draft or a final of Fitzwilliam or for here.
Okay.
But I'll put that on my list to follow up with tomorrow.
One of the other important benchmarks would be a date that we were to obtain from Dave Lapointe. And we can work on getting that date before the next meeting. But we were asked to calculate backwards from the very last day that we would have to make this decision for implementation for next school year. To calculate backwards as to what we need to gather before that date comes and goes. Because our Director of Buildings and Grounds would be the one who knows the last opportunity that we would have to make these changes before the summer comes and goes and we have to put students back into the buildings. So we'll obtain that over the next 2 meetings. Over the next 2 weeks and before the next meeting comes.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that we want to have accomplished on this before our next school board meeting? No? All right, if you guys think of anything that we need to do to make progress before the next school board meeting, please let me know. All right, and we will keep that on the agenda. We were also requested to have a discussion on services for exceptional students, and Jeremy, can I have your thoughts on that?
I thought you said education.
I did, and I heard you and Jeremy having a conversation, so I thought I got it handed back. Okay. All right, so we stand at education is evaluating this. Jeremy will look at it and we'll hear from you soon. I will take it off the agenda
Okay,
until I hear from you that it should come back.
sounds good.
Okay. That brings us to our consent agenda. Betty, do you have the number from our manifest?
I do. I'd like to move the manifest in the amount of $1,840,545.03. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
One abstention.
Okay. Very good. We have several sets of minutes that we need to look at. The first of them is the joint budget session. And do I have a motion on those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain?
Abstain.
Oh,
Abstain?
Scott, Rob, and Phyllis?
Excuse me.
And Karen?
I do. I wasn't there. It's in Florida.
You brag. All right, and we're moving on to the public minutes for November 21st.
I would make a motion on the public minutes of November 21st
For a
to
second?
approve them as
Second.
written.
All right, is there any discussion on these? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Thank you, that was Karen and Scott this time.
Okay.
Lastly, we have the non-public minutes.
Make a motion to approve the non-public November 21st meeting as written.
Second.
All right, and do we have any discussion on these? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions?
Abstain.
Karen?
Could I ask a quick question? Sorry. I wasn't at the meetings, and I apologize. I'm bringing this up after. I noticed Scott also didn't vote for the minutes. Were you present? Because it lists you present at the meeting.
I arrived partway through the meeting.
Okay. I just thought I'd ask.
Lisa, can I ask a question? Are those non-public meetings sealed?
They are not at this time.
Are those the ones you're referring to?
Any other questions on these? All right.
Okay.
Let's talk about next meeting's agenda. We will have Troy Emerson. Anything else that we know we would like to discuss at the next meeting?
Are we going to see the warrants?
Of course. And that will be the meeting at which we will take our final look at the warrants. Yeah. Rob?
Just a question. If you remember a year ago, we were approaching this time and we had, what, 3 or 4 consecutive snowstorms? And I can't remember where we sat on the policy to change the date or cancel a meeting based on a snowstorm. I'd just like to revisit that because I remember, we got jammed up a little bit time-wise.
We did work on a policy for a contingent date that would be a standing contingency. And
Just because we're in snow season.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, but I'll put it so we can discuss next time.
3992 abstain. 2 absent. Right.
When is our next policy committee meeting?
February 21st, I believe. The scheduled one, and we're also trying to plan, I think we had told the full board at one time where we were planning a workshop day, and scheduling-wise, that didn't work out, so we're thinking about 1 to 2 half-days in January as well, but we're not meeting again in December.
Okay. I know Jeremy and Betty want to talk to you about that.
Yeah, we spoke.
Okay.
6766.
Yeah.
Abstain is 3.
Is there anyone for second public comments?
Absent is 2247.
No? Scott?
Really quick on the snowstorm question, policy BEA allows us to post a special meeting as long as it's advertised at least 24 hours prior to the date of that meeting. I think that's what we relied on to allow for a reschedule.
Awesome, thank you.
We will have a couple of non-publics under 91A32. And in this case, it's A, discussion of employees' compensation, termination, et cetera. And just in full disclosure, we'll be talking about our contracts, so.
I'm not
At this
positive
time,
about that.
I will take a motion to go into non-public.
Yeah, no break.
Do you want to take a break?
Well, so they can.
Yeah. Okay. We'll take a recess until 7. Yeah.
5.